All right, welcome everyone to another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring some really interesting insights from a software engineer and streamer named Michael the Primeagen Paulson.
Okay.
And this is from his long conversation on the Lex Fridman podcast. We've got a bunch of different sources here for you,
Right.
including the full YouTube transcript and the dedicated transcript page from Lex's website. And our mission is pretty straightforward, right? We're going to extract like the most valuable nuggets about programming, AI, building a career in tech, and just personal growth in general. All for you.
Yeah.
You know, those of you who are busy and want to learn quickly.
Quickly and thoroughly.
Quickly and thoroughly, exactly.
And what's really striking about the Primeagen is he's not just, a super talented programmer. He's got this really fascinating background.
Yeah.
And a bunch of, strong beliefs and experiences that he brings to the table.
Yeah.
That really kind of inform his perspective on things.
For sure. And just for a little bit of context, if you're not already familiar, the Primeagen is currently a streamer, but his, presence online is really built upon like a decade of serious achievements in the tech industry.
Right.
Most notably at Netflix.
Yeah.
And, this journey from like that daily grind of coding to, sharing his wisdom online, I think gives him a really, really, informed perspective.
It does. Absolutely.
So what we're essentially trying to do is give you like the concentrated version of hours of discussion.
Yep.
Pulling out those surprising facts and actionable advice that you can, actually use.
Take away and use, for sure.
Think of it as like your shortcut to understanding some key ideas without, investing a huge amount of time.
Absolutely.
So I think maybe a good place to start is, what he considers the most challenging aspect of programming.
Yeah, I found this part really interesting. He basically said that, the biggest challenge isn't always the raw technical difficulty of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually what he calls factory line kind of work. Those repetitive tasks where the solution is already out there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And you're just kind of, executing.
Right. So it's not really creative.
Exactly.
It's just more like following a set process.
Yeah, and he gave this great example of working at this company called Schedulicity.
Okay.
Where he was essentially, generating objects from a database and displaying them on a web page.
Oh, okay.
Just over and over again.
Yeah.
And he really felt this lack of what he called unknown unknowns.
Interesting.
And it was really demotivating for him.
So, like, there was no real challenge. There was no element of discovery or solving a unique problem.
Yeah, it was like, you already knew what you had to do and how to do it. There was no real problem solving involved.
Right. I guess that makes sense, right?
It does, yeah.
It speaks to, like, our human need to, like, have those moments of, like, aha, like, we figured this out, we solved something new.
Yeah, that aha moment, it's a great way to put it. It's like we crave those moments of discovery.
Yeah.
And when we're stuck in a rut doing the same thing over and over again, it can be really draining.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think for you, the listener, maybe take a minute to consider, do your current tasks offer enough of those unknown unknowns?
Right.
Like, are you feeling challenged? Are you feeling like you're, constantly learning and growing?
Yeah, are you still engaged?
Yeah.
Are you finding those moments of excitement in your work?
Totally. And I think, another point he brought up that I found really interesting is, he sort of addressed this kind of limited viewpoint that, a lot of people in particularly in online tech communities have, that like web development is like the dominant or only, truly significant field of programming.
Right.
And he kind of rightly emphasized that the landscape is so much bigger than that.
It is.
It's so diverse. And he specifically mentioned, things like embedded robotics, machine learning, networking, operating systems, compilers, even the sheer like intellectual joy of designing your own programming language.
Yeah.
Like building your own language.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fascinating stuff.
Absolutely.
And so, he sees himself as what he calls a tools engineer.
Okay.
And, his focus has always been on building libraries and systems that empower other developers.
Right.
He's less interested in, like, building the end product for the user, you know? And one of his early projects that he mentioned, and I thought this was really cool, is he actually built this web UI library that basically simulated an iPad interface.
Oh, wow.
But on an iPad 2.
Okay.
Remember those old like first generation iPads?
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty impressive stuff.
It is. It is.
And then he also developed his own custom JavaScript build system, like way before the rise of tools like Grunt and Gulp.
Right, right. So he was kind of ahead of the curve there.
Yeah, totally. And you know, even during his decade at Netflix, a lot of his work focused on creating, you know, internal developer tools.
So it sounds like being a tools engineer isn't just about like building, you know, little utilities. It's more strategic.
Yeah.
It's about making the whole team more productive, more capable.
For sure, for sure. And, you know, it's interesting. He actually contrasted this with building features, you know, directly for users. Because, you know, he said that, you know, understanding what people say they want and what they actually need can be really different.
Yeah.
You know, he gave that classic example of, you know, someone asking for a faster horse instead of a car.
Right, right.
And so, you know, working directly with developers as his users, he found the communication to be a lot more direct.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really interesting insight.
I did too.
Now, you know, another important aspect of software development that he touched on is DevOps.
Yeah, DevOps.
And someone had asked about it on Reddit, and he gave this really concise explanation.
Yeah.
Basically saying that, you know, it's not this specialized team of like special ops programmers,
Right,
you know,
right.
with unique skills. It's really the essential function of making sure that when you deploy a service, you know,
Yeah.
or application, it stays up.
It works.
It works, exactly. And it can handle, you know, the demand.
Yeah.
And he drew this really clear distinction between a small, like a mom and pop website where the deployment process is pretty straightforward.
Right.
And, you know, the complex operations of a company like Netflix,
Right.
you know, which needs sophisticated, you know, build, deploy, and scaling mechanisms.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really clear way of putting it.
It was. It really highlighted that core purpose of DevOps, making sure those systems are reliable and scalable.
Exactly. Now, here's something that might surprise you, especially in this day and age of, you know, incredibly advanced debuggers and all these tools. The Primeagen actually credits, you know, his early proficiency in navigating complex code bases to print debugging.
Okay.
And his initial work on government robotics projects where, you know, printing output was often the only way to get information out of the system.
Right.
Really honed the skill. And he even jokingly referred to himself as a print-off debugging champion.
That's funny.
It is. And it might sound old school, you know,
Yeah.
but it's actually incredibly valuable when you're dealing with these massive, like poorly documented systems.
Right.
Like, you know, when you might be feeling lost in a sea of new information.
Right.
I mean,
right.
we've all been there.
Yeah.
You know, starting a new project, new code base, you don't know where anything is.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
And this really highlights the value of those fundamental skills.
Absolutely.
Even when we have all these fancy tools, sometimes the simplest approach is the most effective.
Yeah, and this actually ties into his next story about the lesson he learned from rewriting code.
Okay.
So he was working on Netflix's data fetching library called Falcor.
Okay.
And he looked at this colleague's code, and he basically dismissed it as, you know, goofy.
Oh, okay.
He was convinced he could do better.
Mm-hmm.
So he deleted the original code and started from scratch.
Oh, wow.
And the outcome was actually pretty humbling. He ended up pretty much recreating the original code.
Wow. So he basically wasted a bunch of time, huh?
Yeah, essentially he spent all this time and effort relearning a problem that had already been solved.
Right.
Instead of taking the time to understand, you know, the existing approach.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great takeaway for anyone who's, you know, really focused on learning efficiently. Sometimes, you know, the fastest way forward is to actually invest the time to understand what's already out there.
Right.
Before you try to build something new.
Totally. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Exactly.
And then, you know, he also shared a few, I guess you could say humorous anecdotes
Okay.
about breaking production at Netflix.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So one story involved a mishap with a PHP static variable that led to users seeing the wrong data.
Oh, wow.
Another one was about the Lady Gaga countdown billboard.
Okay.
That froze right at the moment of 0.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine?
That's a big one.
Yeah. And then another one was an infinite loop in the add to my list button on the website
Oh, wow.
that basically just locked up, your entire Netflix experience.
Yeah.
So, these stories are not only funny, but they also kind of illustrate, even the most skilled engineers
Right.
make mistakes.
They do.
Especially when you're dealing with these complex systems at scale. It kind of, humanizes the whole process a little bit.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And I think it also underscores the importance of, thorough testing, code reviews, and having those safety measures in place.
For sure. For sure. Now, he also offered his perspective on Peter Level's push to production philosophy.
Okay.
Where he, as a solo developer, he often deploys code with very minimal testing.
Right.
And the Primeagen sees, both the pros and cons of this approach. So, for a small organization or an individual, it allows for really rapid iteration and deployment because you understand the entire code base yourself, and you can react quickly to any issues.
Yeah.
But he also, very strongly cautioned that this approach would be pretty much catastrophic at a large organization like Microsoft or Netflix.
Yeah, it wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work, just given the number of engineers and the complexity of the systems.
For sure.
And then he also kind of commented on Level's choice of technology, which is PHP, jQuery, and SQL.
Okay.
And he admitted his surprise that, jQuery is still being used so much in modern web development.
Yeah, it seems a little outdated.
Yeah.
But I guess if it works, it works, right?
Right, exactly. And if it's not creating any major performance issues, then why not?
Right.
But he also emphasized that, it's important to evaluate new technologies and consider, if they offer more efficient solutions.
Yeah, you got to stay up to date.
Totally. And then finally, he gave this really, really interesting example of the hidden complexities within these large systems.
Okay.
And he described how, implementing what seemed like a pretty straightforward feature for the show Black Mirror on Netflix required like 20 engineers across different teams.
Wow.
Yeah. And this complexity arose entirely from like data dependencies.
Oh, wow.
And specifically the need to transition from what they called Lolomo to Loloromo.
Loloromo, what is that?
Yeah, so think of Lolomo as like your basic list of movies.
Okay.
But Loloromo added this layer of like personalized recommendation within that list.
Okay.
And the complexity comes from these algorithms needing to pull data from different systems and integrate seamlessly.
Right, it's all connected.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just shows you, like, how interconnected these modern software ecosystems are.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling.
It really is. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And talk about some of the Primeagen's personal experiences, and the things that have influenced his perspective.
Yeah.
So he briefly touched upon some early life events, including exposure to pornography at a young age and losing his father.
Right.
But he didn't go into, explicit detail. He really just framed these experiences as part of his journey.
Right.
And how they shaped his worldview.
Right. Yeah, I mean, everyone's got their own story, right?
Totally. And these events, both good and bad, I think they really impact our values.
Yeah, they do.
And our perspectives.
Yeah.
Now, his initial encounter with programming, I thought this was really, really interesting.
Okay.
It wasn't through formal education. It was through a game.
A game. Wow.
Called Grail.
Grail.
Yeah, Graal. And he described it as being kind of similar to Zelda, but it had this level editor.
Oh, cool.
And this scripting language that was very similar to C.
Wow.
And that was his like entry point into coding.
So he was learning by actually creating things.
Yeah.
In this game environment.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it just shows you how like these personal experiences can really spark a passion for tech.
Yeah.
He also talked about this really significant turning point in his life around the age of 19, which he described as a feeling of the presence of God. Yeah, and it led to this really sudden shift in his values.
Right.
And this desire for personal change.
I mean, that's a pretty powerful experience.
Yeah. It really is.
And it kind of shows you that, these transformations can happen at any point in life.
For sure.
Sometimes it just takes a really powerful event or a shift in perspective to change your entire
Yeah, right.
direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, speaking of change, he talked about his academic journey,
Okay.
which I thought was really, really inspiring.
Yeah.
He's actually a struggling student in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He even mentioned this teacher who basically told him he was the worst student she'd ever had.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But he dedicated himself to learning,
Mm.
and over several years, he excelled in math and computer science.
That's amazing.
It really is.
So it's like a real testament to perseverance.
Totally, totally.
Like, significant progress is possible even when you're starting from behind. It's never too late.
It's never too late, yeah. All right, so now let's talk about, this topic that everybody's talking about.
Okay.
AI and programming.
AI.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
It is everywhere. And the Primeagen shared his experience using GitHub Copilot.
Okay.
And why he decided to stop using it.
Oh, interesting.
And what he found was he was spending more time, reviewing the AI-generated code
Oh, wow.
than actually writing it himself.
Yeah.
And he felt like it led to a less deep understanding of the code and the problem solving.
So he wasn't really learning as much
Yeah.
by relying on the AI.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, it's a nuanced perspective, right?
And
Because AI can definitely help,
Mm.
but there's this potential trade-off in
Uh-huh.
terms of your understanding.
Yeah.
When it comes to learning new languages, he outlined two main approaches.
Okay.
So, the first one is learning by doing.
Right. Just dive in.
Yeah.
Build something.
Build something.
Figure it out as you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And the second approach, which was inspired by Mitchell Hashimoto, is to actually read the entire language reference first.
Oh, wow. The whole thing.
Yeah.
Like cover to cover.
Yeah, to get a really comprehensive understanding.
Okay.
But he emphasized that regardless of the approach, the most important step is to build something,
Right.
to actually apply what you've learned.
You got to get your hands dirty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to AI as a learning tool, he had both, optimistic and cautious views.
Okay.
So on the positive side, he recognized the potential of AI to democratize learning,
Right.
providing personalized answers, making information more accessible.
Yeah.
But he also, expressed concerns about the risk of creating a generation of learners who don't have a deep understanding
Right.
or problem-solving skills.
Yeah, they become too reliant on the AI.
Exactly. He called it learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness. That's a good term.
Yeah, and he really stressed the importance of not sacrificing knowledge for speed.
Right.
It's not just about getting the answer quickly.
You got to understand how you got there.
Exactly. He also talked about the limitations of AI in debugging.
Okay.
So, while AI can help identify potential issues, the real art of finding those complex bugs still relies on human intuition
Right.
and experience.
Yeah. You got to have that deep understanding of the system
Yeah.
to really figure out what's going on.
And he gave this example of large language models generating incorrect security vulnerabilities in curl,
Oh, wow.
which I thought was really interesting.
So even the AI can get it wrong.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. So, given all these AI advancements, what does he see as the future of programmers?
Right.
What's going to happen to us?
Are we all going to be out of a job?
Yeah, right?
That's the big question, right?
And he believes that, while AI tools will continue to improve and automate certain tasks, human developers will still be essential
Okay.
for tackling those really complex problems,
Right.
for debugging and for guiding AI tools effectively.
So it's more of a collaboration
Yeah,
than a replacement.
totally. And he drew this analogy to the evolution of programming languages themselves,
Okay.
from low-level assembly language to C to higher-level languages.
Right.
And it's just, this continuous evolution,
Yeah.
a shift in focus for programmers,
Right.
rather than, being completely replaced.
So we need to adapt.
You need to adapt.
We need to learn these new skills
Totally.
and figure out how to work with AI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he also mentioned, some interesting data from the Stack Overflow developer survey, which
Yeah.
showed that, a majority of developers are already using AI tools.
Wow. Real?
Yeah. And the biggest benefit they cite is increased productivity.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But there's still a low level of trust in the accuracy of AI-generated code.
Right.
And skepticism about its ability to handle really complex tasks,
Yeah.
without human oversight.
Yeah. We're not quite there yet.
Not quite there
But
yet.
we're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there.
It's moving fast.
It is moving fast. And then lastly, in the realm of AI, he shared some of his own experimentation
Okay.
in areas outside of traditional coding.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
So he's been using large language models to simulate Twitch chat interactions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and even to play tower defense.
Really?
Yeah, and this just highlights the diverse capabilities of these models.
Yeah.
And the importance of prompt engineering.
Right.
Which is, learning how to communicate with these models effectively.
It's a whole new skill set.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to productivity.
Okay.
Focus, learning.
Let's do it.
So the Primeagen actually admitted that, achieving focus in programming was initially a challenge for him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
He was constantly getting distracted by what he called side quests.
Side quests.
Yeah, having to look up basic information or concepts.
Right, right.
But as he gained more mastery, as he built that foundational knowledge, his focus improved.
So it's like, once you have those fundamentals down, you can really start to focus on the bigger picture.
Totally. And he compared it to learning a musical instrument.
Okay.
As you get more proficient, you spend less time struggling with the basic notes.
Right.
And you can really focus on playing those complex pieces.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, and he also emphasized the importance of optimizing your environment
Mm-hmm.
to minimize distractions.
Right.
Especially, knowing your editor.
Yeah.
Like really knowing your editor.
Like it's an extension of yourself.
Totally. So you're not wasting time searching for commands or fighting with the quirks of the editor.
Yeah, you can just flow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And speaking of editors, he actually has this rule for himself.
Okay.
He only makes significant changes to his editor configuration files once a year.
Oh, wow. Once a year?
Once a year. That's discipline.
It is.
Yeah.
And it helps him avoid,
Yeah.
this endless tweaking
Right.
and keeps him focused on the actual coding work.
Yeah, you don't want to get lost in the weeds.
Exactly. And then finally, he offered some advice for young programmers
Okay.
starting their careers.
Yeah.
And he emphasized, building a genuine passion and skill for programming,
Right.
but also, equally important is finding balance in life.
Yeah.
Your health, your relationships, your morals.
You got to have it all.
You got to have it all.
Yeah.
And he cautioned against getting, what he called lost in the sauce
Yeah.
of endless work.
Or taking unethical shortcuts.
Yeah, it's got to be sustainable.
Totally. And even with, all the AI advancements, he still believes that learning to program is incredibly valuable.
Right.
So, it's not just about the technical skills, it's about adopting this mindset,
Yeah.
this approach to problem solving.
That's what's important.
Totally. And he also shared some thoughts on career trajectories and job hopping.
Okay.
And he sees value in experiencing different company cultures, different roles,
Right.
to really figure out what you enjoy.
Yeah, find your niche.
Yeah. But he also highlighted the benefits of staying with a company
Right.
and taking on more responsibility.
Yeah, build something.
Yeah. So, don't feel pressured to constantly move around.
Right.
There's value in both approaches.
Yeah.
So, all right, I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
In this deep dive into the Primeagen's insights. And just to recap those key takeaways for you, he emphasized that the biggest challenge in programming often isn't the technical complexity, but the lack of novelty in those repetitive tasks.
Right.
He highlighted the diversity of the programming world. Expert